She saw that Amina was not trying to pull David away from his faith, but rather, she wanted to build a life with him that honored both of their beliefs. Olufunke, who had initially been worried about the future of her grandchildren's religious upbringing, came to see that Amina would raise her children with the same love and respect that she had shown in her own family. Femi Adeyemi, David's father, was more pragmatic about the situation. While he still had concerns about the social and business implications of his son marrying outside of their community, he respected David's decision and ultimately gave his blessing. His only stipulation was that David remained involved in the family business and maintained a strong connection to their Christian faith. In Kano, Amina's father remained cautious, but he honored his word. While Alhaji Bello never fully embraced the idea of his daughter marrying a Christian, he chose to respect her choice and began to see David as a man of integrity, who genuinely cared for Amina. The respect David showed toward their family and faith helped ease some of Alhaji Bello's initial concerns. Amina's mother, Zainab, was perhaps the most supportive of all. Though she had initially been shocked by Amina's choice, she saw how much David cared for her daughter and how determined they both were to make their relationship work. Zainab quietly advocated for her daughter, helping to smooth tensions within the family and encouraging Amina to follow her heart. The day of David and Amina's wedding was a blend of two worlds coming together. Held in a neutral territory, in the beautiful city of Abuja, the ceremony was a reflection of the love and respect they had for each other's cultures. Amina wore a stunning white gown for the Christian wedding ceremony, and David donned traditional Hausa attire for the Islamic rites. Both families gathered together, with friends and relatives from Lagos and Kano joining to celebrate this unlikely union. As they stood before their families and exchanged vows, David and Amina knew that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges. But they also knew that their love had already overcome so much. They had defied the expectations of their families, communities, and even themselves, proving that love could bridge the deepest divides. In the end, it wasn't their differences that defined them, but their shared commitment to building a life together, one that honored both of their traditions, their faiths and their families. As they looked into each other's eyes, the weight of the world's expectations faded, and all that remained was the love they had fought so hard to preserve. Together, they stepped into their future, ready to face whatever came next. David and Amina's married life, while filled with love and mutual respect, was not without its hurdles. In the early days after the wedding, they were wrapped in the euphoria of their new life together. However, as the weeks and months passed, they quickly realized that blending their two very distinct cultures and faiths would take more than love. It required constant effort, compromise, and patience. Living in Abuja, a city that represented a middle ground between the northern and southern parts of Nigeria, David and Amina had hoped to avoid some of the tensions that might have risen if they had lived in either Lagos or Kano. Yet, even in Abuja, they faced their own unique challenges. The community around them, while more cosmopolitan, still held strong cultural ties, and many people couldn't fully comprehend the union between a Yoruba Christian man and a Hausa Muslim woman. One of the first challenges they faced was in how they would practice their faiths. David was deeply connected to his Christian upbringing, regularly attending church with his family every Sunday. Amina, on the other hand, was a devoted Muslim, observing her 5 daily prayers and fasting during Ramadan. Though they had agreed before marriage that neither would force the other to convert or abandon their faith, the day-to-day reality of practicing 2 different religions under the same roof was more complicated than they anticipated. On Fridays, Amina would attend Jumu'ah prayers at the mosque, and David respected this without question. Sundays, however, were a bit more complicated. David often wanted Amina to join him at church for special occasions, especially during holidays like Easter or Christmas, which were very important to his family. While Amina was open-minded and would sometimes accompany him, she struggled with balancing her respect for his traditions and her own Islamic values. There were also moments when David would feel left out during Ramadan, as Amina would spend long evenings breaking fast with her family and observing prayers. This difference became particularly challenging when David's family, especially his mother Olufunke, would ask why Amina wasn't more involved in Christian activities. Olufunke had grown to like Amina but couldn't quite let go of her hope that Amina might one day convert to Christianity. Though she never voiced this directly, her subtle suggestions made Amina feel as though she wasn't fully accepted. David, noticing the strain, would have to reassure his mother that they had agreed to keep their faiths separate, but this tension persisted quietly in the background. Despite these difficulties, David and Amina made a conscious effort to support each other's faith. On Christmas, Amina would help decorate their home with lights and join David for family gatherings, though she would quietly excuse herself from any overtly religious prayers. Similarly, David learned to fast during parts of Ramadan, joining Amina in solidarity for Suhoor and Iftar, even though he didn't observe all of the religious practices. Perhaps the most delicate challenge arose when they began discussing the future of their family. Both David and Amina knew from the start that raising children would bring their cultural differences to the forefront. They had already agreed that their children would grow up understanding both Islam and Christianity, but they hadn't fully anticipated how deeply ingrained their family's expectations were. A few months into their marriage, Amina's mother, Zainab, began visiting more frequently, bringing with her gentle but persistent suggestions about how their future children should be raised. In the Hausa tradition, it was expected that children would grow up under the guidance of Islamic teachings, and Zainab wanted to make sure that her grandchildren would be no different. She brought up the importance of the Islamic naming ceremony and early education in Quranic teachings, not to mention the expectation that their sons would be circumcised according to Islamic customs. David, on the other hand, was raised with strong Christian values and was already thinking about how to share his faith with his future children. He remembered fondly his own childhood, attending Sunday school, reading the Bible with his father, and participating in church activities. He wanted his children to experience the same, even though he knew it would be difficult to reconcile with Amina's religious upbringing. The couple had a long, difficult conversations about how to navigate these expectations. At first, the discussions were tense, with both David and Amina feeling as though they were being asked to compromise too much of their own identity. But gradually, they began to see a path forward. "We don't have to choose one path for our children," Amina said one evening as they sat on their balcony overlooking the city. "They can learn about both faiths, grow up knowing both sides of their heritage. We don't have to force them to choose, they'll find their own way." David agreed, though he admitted it wouldn't be easy. "I just want them to feel grounded," he said. "But you're right. We have to let them decide when they're old enough. In the meantime, we can teach them what we believe, and they'll grow up knowing they're part of both worlds." The decision was far from simple, but it was one that both David and Amina felt comfortable with. They knew that their children would be different from others in their community, straddling two cultures, two religions, but they also believed that this could be their strength. Outside the home, David and Amina faced a different set of challenges. Despite the growing acceptance of intercultural and interfaith marriages in modern Nigeria, there were still pockets of resistance, especially in more conservative circles. In Lagos, where David's business connections were deeply entrenched, some of his associates would occasionally make subtle, sometimes patronizing comments about his marriage. "You've taken a bold step," one colleague said at a business dinner. "I'm sure it's difficult, given your wife's background." David learned to brush off these comments, though they bothered him. He hated the idea that anyone might view Amina as the other, or that their marriage was seen as something exotic or problematic. He loved Amina for who she was, and he refused to let society's perceptions dictate how they lived their lives. In Kano, Amina faced a similar issue. When she visited her old friends, many of whom had married within the Hausa Muslim community, there was often an awkward silence whenever the topic of her marriage came up. While her closest friends supported her, others seemed to pity her, as if she had given up something essential by marrying David. This was difficult for Amina, as she had always been proud of her heritage, but she refused to let the judgments of others affect her happiness. Over time, as David and Amina continued to face these challenges, they grew stronger as a couple. They learned to celebrate the differences that once seemed like obstacles and found creative ways to blend their traditions. They held both a Christmas dinner and an Eid celebration at their home each year, inviting friends and family from both sides to join in the festivities. They encouraged open discussions about faith and culture, teaching those around them that love could transcend even the deepest divides. Amina, who had once been worried about losing her identity, found that she could be both a devoted Muslim and a loving wife to a Christian man. David, who had initially feared that their differences would drive them apart, realized that their shared values, respect, kindness, and commitment to family, were the foundation of their marriage. As they looked toward the future, David and Amina knew that their journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more moments of doubt and struggles. But they also knew that they had built something unique, something that transcended the boundaries of culture and tradition. In the end, it wasn't just about their love for each other. It was about creating a life that embraced both of their worlds, teaching their children that they didn't have to choose between their mother's faith and their father's heritage. They could be both and even be more. Together, David and Amina would continue to defy expectations, building a family that was stronger for its diversity and a love that could withstand anything the world threw at them.